How's everybody doing tonight? Yes, God, that's what I get. Waiting to get cleaned up until I'm actually on camera. God, I'm a mess today. So what's going on out in Facebook land and Twitter land and Twitch land and all you other lands out there? Let me know what's important to you today. Now, of course, this is my town hall. This is my Ask Me Anything time. And literally, this is the best way for me to get out. And this actually allows you to ask me questions that you didn't think about, day before, a few days ago. You can come back, ask me later, get a live response. This helps you. This helps me. Gives me a better idea of what's important to you. Yeah, of course, you know me. I am the garden gnome. I actually went out today, spent time in the garden, did some picking fruit, some blackberries, getting stuff ready for fall. A friend of mine's doing an awful lot of canning right now, so I help with the harvest. She handles the canning. She likes doing that sort of stuff. But so follow me, like, share, comment, all those good things, because that's what helps me keep this thing running for you. Also helps keep me informed about the issues that are important to you, so that when you send me to Congress in November, we'll be able to get things done. So, talk to me. Let's go ahead and get a couple other things up out of the way here. Now, while I'm waiting for you guys to join me in this lovely conversation. Yeah. Breonna Taylor. Big issue. The verdict came out yesterday. Cops were acquitted. Some say there were issues with regards to how the DA decided to handle things with the investigation, about how he wanted to actually report a couple of different issues. But what it ended up coming down to is we have the war on drugs. The war on drugs is ultimately what caused her death. Regardless of what other circumstances were involved in it, whether we cite the issues with the no-knock raid, which apparently they had a warrant for the no-knock raid, but they say they didn't do the no-knock raid. They actually knocked, which is one of those interesting situations. You do a no-knock, you get a no-knock warrant, and then you decide to not no-knock. Yeah, there's a couple other things that are involved in that are still not good. But ultimately what this comes down to is the war on drugs. The war on drugs is what's responsible for Breonna Taylor's death. Yes, the police officers showed negligence. Yes, the judge should have made sure that the address was the right address. There were so many failures in this process, but these are failures that are consistent with the way we've exercised the war on drugs for the past 40 years, ever since Nixon. I mean, well, let's go back. Nixon, we had the issues with Philadelphia. Philadelphia Police Department actually used a helicopter to drop bombs on a underserved, over-policed community because COINTELPRO told them there were social activists in the area that were against the war. We said they had drugs, that they were running drugs, that they were running a cult. They were doing human trafficking, sex trafficking, all of that fun stuff. And boom, Philadelphia police, because it was seen as a stronghold, as a fortress, they decided the best way to do it was drop a bomb and kill members of 4 or 5 families, as well as completely destroy an entire neighborhood and community in an attempt to get them, all in the name of the war on drugs. Here we are 30, 40, 50 years later, and we are still having casualties from the war on drugs and the way we've decided to allow police and law enforcement exercise, those crimes. We go back, we actually take a look at what went on with Biden. The reason why is because Biden's one of those senators that was responsible for the Policeman's Bill of Rights. which is one of those rules that extended the capacity of, the crime bill. It was one of those that helped create, and keep in mind, he was part of the judge selection for the SCOTUS. It basically created this doctrine of qualified immunity. Now, at this point, qualified immunity, even though it's not written into legislation, was essentially created by the courts, the Supreme Court of the United States. And it's become common law through court caseloads. So this is one of those things we actually need to go back and we need to write legislation in a lot of ways to remove what the Supreme Court created through qualified immunity. We need to legislate, and that's how we counter the Supreme Court of the United States. That is the way we go in, and we actually take care of a number of these issues related to all of this misbehavior, misappropriation. If the Supreme Court does something that screws up or writes a law, Citizens United is one of those situations. If the Supreme Court creates case law that either the executive branch or feels is inappropriate through the representatives of the people, then it becomes the responsibility of either the executive branch to address the issue or Congress to address the issue. This is the checks and balances. So if the SCOTUS creates a doctrine of qualified immunity for law enforcement officers in the judiciary that allows certain inappropriate rulings or certain misjudgments in the execution of the performance of their job, the legislators can go in and say, yeah, no, Supreme Court, yeah, we don't believe in the qualified immunity that you just created through case law. Not a big fan of that. So again, that's the checks and balances that we create with the three branches. Supreme Court gets to come out and say, love what you're trying to do with this, House and, Senate. Love the legislation you passed. However, upon review, we've determined that it is unconstitutional. So that will not go into effect. This is another one of those things that's actually interesting, and it becomes extremely important this year because we're actually dealing with a situation where the Supreme Court, the last Supreme Court pick was Kavanaugh. Now, most of you are very much aware that Kavanaugh was a pro-Patriot Act judge. As a pro-Patriot Act judge, he feels that the Patriot Act, under certain states of national emergency, overrule our Bill of Rights. Okay. No, as a libertarian, no. Bill of Rights are human rights, and a state of emergency does not constitute a government response that is in violation of those human rights. Yet, here we got Kavanaugh. And he's not the only pro-Patriot Act judge that is currently sitting on the bench at the Supreme Court of the United States. So, it starts to become problematic, especially when we look at Trump's. I haven't dug too deep into Trump's pick yet. She seems to have a good scholarly head on her shoulders. She does seem to be the appropriate female pick to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg on a number of issues. However, I have yet to see anything stating where she falls in regards to the Patriot Act, qualified immunity, or Citizens United. Now, these are all three very big things. Now, of course, you would expect her as a woman to be very pro-women's rights, but again, until we actually get her in front and sit down and start watching the Senate grill her with the questions to try and understand where she stands in regards to the Constitution, in regards to the Patriot Act, in regards to the 1994 crime bill, knowing whether or not she's actually for or against the Patriot Act, taking precedence over the American Bill of Rights, the Constitutional Bill of Rights. Yeah, we still got to dig into that. Speaking of SCOTUS picks, Jo Jorgensen has let out a short list of who she would like to see as potential SCOTUS picks. Unfortunately, one of the names on that list does come with a suspicious amount of baggage. Who recommended that particular name to her, especially considering law isn't one of Jorgensen's primary issues? She probably accepted a list proffered her by staff that she didn't, at least I hope, she wasn't aware of the baggage that came with some of those names. The people who gave her those names should have been very aware of the baggage. I won't list the names in particular. You take a little bit of time, look on Twitter. Chances are you'll be able to figure it out yourself. But a number of the other names on the list do come with strong recommendations, significantly less baggage, and they're still very much in favor of American liberties, including human rights. Well, especially human rights. That's sort of what it's all about, as well as limiting the power of the state. So all of these things are actually really good things for them to be considering. But so go ahead, Google it, take a look at the list, see how you feel about a number of the Supreme Court picks, her short list, in relationship to what Trump as well as what Biden are looking at. Now, keep in mind, A.G. Barr, who, if Trump remains in office for another 4 years, will continue to be responsible for the Attorney General's office. We've already witnessed that Attorney General William Barr is very much a fan of the Patriot Act. He's very much a fan of the crime bill, very much a fan of human rights abuses. Otherwise, he would have already issued memos to a number of the subordinate organizations related to the Department of Justice and had certain things repealed. As a matter of fact, he literally could have written the executive order for Trump to sign that would have curtailed an awful lot of the behavior and abuses that currently exist within the system. Now, one of these is, and I still don't understand how this managed to happen, is the illegal hysterectomies were being performed at one of the ICE detention facilities in Georgia. I don't know why an unlicensed OBGYN was performing illegal and or forced hysterectomies without full consent of the individuals who he essentially sterilized. Yes, folks, that's eugenics. Yes, folks, that is 1945 Germany. Yes, folks, that is 2010 California state institutions. Yes, folks, that is even 1980s era Bureau of Indian Affairs. Dude, come on, man. When are we going to learn? When are we going to get it drilled into our government's head that genocide, eugenics in genocide on American soil is a no-go? The fact that we haven't prosecuted a number of these individuals for this illegal behavior conducted in the name of the state just continues to baffle me. And right now we got a whistleblower that's in more trouble right now for having reported this violation of human rights than the physician who actually conducted, you know, the operations. This is insane to me. It's completely bizarro world. It's exactly how are we supposed to say, go out to the world and say we believe in human rights? We are advocates for human rights, when all evidence is to the contrary. We can't say, well, we haven't committed a human rights violation in the last 10 years. Yeah, dude, we've committed a human rights violation within the last 10 months. We have an election in process, and we have government officials, we have agents of the state that are actively violating human rights and constitutional rights as we speak. How do we go out into the world and say you must be better at human rights when our own house is so dirty? And literally, we live in a glass house, and people look in and they see us doing the things that we tell other countries not to do. That's not how that works, folks. It doesn't. So what do we need to do to clean house? What do we need to fix? What are the things that are important to you that we need to fix, so that when we are ready to go out, we actually have a shining example of appropriate national behavior when we go out and we say, we want to bring you American democracy. We want to bring you American liberty. What do we need to do here in America so that, the windows on our glass house aren't so stained? Now for me, part of that is of course, bring our troops home. We want to bring our troops home. That's part of it. Reason why is because we stop trying to force our will on other nations, especially when, our own house hasn't been cleaned ever. Literally, if we do any shuffling around, we stick it all in the garage. Our garage is overflowing with junk right now. So what do? Well, 1, we bring our troops home. 2, we start cleaning house. By cleaning house, I mean going through and removing all of those laws that we use to justify violating human rights. We eliminate, the 1994 crime bill. We eliminate the war on drugs. We eliminate the war on sex. We actually go through and eliminate all of that legislation so that people can start understanding what it is to be free again, to be free of state legislated morality. Yeah, right. Absolutely. We're tired of the state telling us what's right and what's wrong, especially when the state is telling us stuff that is good for us is actually bad for us. Why do we continue to put up with that, folks? Why? They tell us marijuana is bad for us, and then they throw us in prison for it and wreck our lives. Meanwhile, we have people who've proven that marijuana is medicinal. Appropriate use of marijuana improves lives, improves a lot of lives, improves the lives of veterans, improves the lives of other victims of post-traumatic stress injury, survivors of post-traumatic stress injury. Marijuana improves lives. Yet we still have a government that is telling us it will destroy lives. And because we don't believe them that it will destroy lives, they destroy our lives because we use it. Yeah. Continuing human rights violations. We need to fix that. But, bring our troops home. Fix our legislation. Bring our troops home. And start creating a world, start creating a nation that is indeed that shining light of liberty, that does indeed invite people in who are brave and talented and interested in creating a greater world, a greater society, participating in our open source liberty. Open source. I love that word. Open source liberty. It's such an awesome word. Just go out there and share ideas. Sort of like what I'm doing right now with you. We're sharing ideas. We're talking about things. We're talking about issues. We're talking about policy. It's what open source liberty is about. It's about the sharing of ideas, the sharing of concepts. And one of the great things about the American experiment is the fact that, we should be able to say, okay, we're going to let communities do what they want. And if what they're doing is right, that community succeeds. And maybe other communities will emulate that success. That's what open source liberty is about. Other communities can try something different. If they're successful, now we got two paths to success. We're not tied to one. And there's a third community out there, and they try something, and guess what? It doesn't work. Go ahead. Give that third community an opportunity to try what community 1 or community 2 did. Give us an opportunity to figure out what represents success, what leads to success. We can take a look at different ways of handling property rights, of handling land rights, handling community. One of the issues we got right now all across America is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 50% of Americans are renters. They don't own land. They rent land. They lease land. Sometimes they don't even have land. All they got is the dwelling. You got an apartment complex. They rent or they lease the apartment complex. They don't have land rights. They just can't step out the back of their apartment, and turn a plot of land into a garden because somebody else owns the land that the apartment complex is in. Maybe they can get creative and set up, a little window, a little vertical garden off the back wall, a little southern exposure, get that springtime light. Maybe they can do little vertical gardens out the back. Maybe the landlord won't let him. Who knows? Thing is we actually have options. There are so many different ways of thinking, so many different ways of processing things, that open source liberty gives us the opportunity to try different things, to see whether or not they succeed, or to understand why they fail. There's no reason why every city in the nation needs to be exactly the same. Yes, I'm talking about you, Alec. Alec is out there. One size fits all. Doesn't matter whether the legislation's in Alabama, New York, Idaho, California. It's all the exact same legislation. One size fits all. Same problem we got when we accept national legislation out of Washington, D.C. One size fits all. Dude, when was the last time you actually tried on something that was one size fits all? Nothing I wear is one size fits all. I mean, really. If the clothes I wore were tried on by somebody half my size, I mean, would that fit? Would it be appropriate? No. It's the reason why the federalization of the United States, the use of think tanks like ALEC that create, a single set of laws, exercised and created for every state, so that a corporation can go into New York or California and that corporation already has a blueprint from another state. The reason why is because now all of the states' legislations look exactly the same. California's legislation looks just like Idaho's legislation, just look like Missouri and Indiana, and ALEC creates one-size-fits-all legislation at the state level. There's only one person that benefits. That's corporate America. You know what corporate America does? Corporate America leeches all of the resources out of a single community and moves it back to where their headquarters are at. Walmart. Case in point. All the profits Walmart makes in Idaho get shipped straight back to the Waltons in Arkansas. Exactly how does that benefit the communities in Idaho? Money doesn't stay here. ALEC legislation creates one-size-fits-all legislation at the state level that benefits only the corporations. I think it's time we give up that. Allow the cities, allow the states to develop autonomously. What works for them? What allows them to succeed? It's time to practice open source liberty again. Like we did back in 1776, minus the human rights violations, which are still going on. Yeah. So, bring our troops home. Open source liberty. Fix the legislation back in Washington, D.C. Active ungovernance. Right? Who we're about doing the active ungovernance. Okay, so got 28 minutes. It's 6 o'clock. 6:30 now, folks. Love you guys. Thanks for participating all across the different lands. Yeah, take a look at who we got. Thanks a lot for stopping in, Natalie. Love the like. Yes, I do. But yeah, so in the header, you see my Twitter, see my Twitch, see my different Facebook feeds, as well as you see my different YouTube channels. Go ahead, like, share any one of those. Let's make this happen. Tell your friends, family, comment, please. I'll go back. I'll take a look at these comments later. If you watch it later, please comment. Let me know. I'll either bring it up at a later event, or I may even go ahead and answer you in line if, it's an appropriate question for the specific topic. So please, in the meantime, please donate to my campaign. It's going to get me into Congress so I can actively ungovern on your behalf back in Washington, D.C. And like, share, comment. Remember, folks, family, friends, community. That and a little organization will get us all free lunch. Stone soup style. Okay. Catch you guys later. Have a fun one. Love ya.